Everything that I work on and have built has been because of what I did in the trades. My job at the companies I worked with was when leads came in, make sure that they get booked. Because I knew
Hmm.
that's the easiest way to be profitable was book leads, follow up with them religiously, stay in front of them with email or content marketing or stuff through social media.
Hi, and welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan, and today I've got with me Josh Crouch. Josh and I have got to know each other over the last couple years, and he's got an incredibly interesting story about how he got into digital marketing, what he's been doing related to that. So, Josh, before I dive into the questions, can you give everybody just kind of an elevator pitch of who is Josh and tell us just a little bit about that journey that got you into digital marketing, if you would?
Yeah, well, I fell into digital marketing kind of by accident. So I was in the HVAC industry for about 9 years or so, and this was the third company that I worked at. I got really good at local SEO, and I took a really deep dive, went into some really heavy, deep manuals and some things online where I kind of just kept digging to see how we can get better and improve our local presence. I started sharing some of those tips with a business coaching group that we were a part of, and then I started having people reach out for help, and that really wasn't the intention at all. So I was working full time and had started having people ask for help. And I've always wanted to own my own business. I didn't think it was going to be digital marketing. I thought maybe it was going to be like an HVAC business at some point or something, but took the opportunity, ran with it. And that was about almost by the time this goes live, it'll be about 4 years ago.
Congratulations. Oh, it's an amazing story. I love to hear that how things sometimes happen unexpectedly, but then as entrepreneurs, we take advantage of those scenarios and we capitalize on that. So talk to me a little bit about Relentless and who do you guys focus on? Obviously, I know that answer, but I'd like our audience to know. Tell the audience about kind of who you guys focus on and what services you're providing to that niche.
We are a bit of a niche within a niche, if you will. And I tell people that a lot because we don't do everything across the board for digital marketing, and I know, we're in some of the same coaching groups and stuff like that. And that's
Hmm.
not necessarily the most common thing, right? You kind
It's
of do like
true.
the paid ads, the SEO, the website design. And it's kind of like this well-rounded thing where you kind of do all three of those things. Well, we don't do the paid ad side. We rely on partners for that stuff because that's just not my experience. I've taken the experience that I had from the trades and everything that I've done from the trades, and I brought it to a service. And because I was already in a niche or niche, I guess I'll say either way because I don't really know the right way
I'm
to
honestly
say
not sure
that.
either. Yeah, I say both. I do.
I say it both ways too. HVAC was the primary focus because that's the business I had been in for almost 10 years. And subsidiaries of that are plumbing and electrical companies because generally speaking, when you know HVAC, you usually know plumbers and you usually know electricians, or you have referrals, and you get to know their businesses a little bit. And that has stayed our focus. We have a couple home service companies outside of that, but 97% of our business is HVAC, plumbing, electrical companies. And then we focus on website design, SEO with a heavy emphasis on local service ads management. And then one of the biggest pieces we've gotten into is doing outbound messaging for customers over the last year and having a tool to do that with. We use a white label version of Go High Level, which most of you listeners probably know about, but we've tweaked it to our needs and put in templates and things like that that help our clients and that they use a lot. And that's been really great for us. It's a nice little lever because the worst part about digital marketing is when your client is slow and you have no lever to pull because nobody's searching for their services right now. And so instead of saying, hey, well, nobody's searching, there's not a whole lot we can do. We can try this, we can try that. No, we have a lever we can pull and say, hey, we can go find you work today. It may not be a ton of work, but it's going to be something in your list. And that's been really beneficial for us.
That's a huge thing though in digital marketing. As you know, I've run an agency for over a decade now myself. That's true. You need a lever to pull, and many times you don't have that. Talk to me a little bit about that. Obviously, Go High Level being a marketing automation platform. A lot of our listeners are going to be aware of it, but yet some of the business owners that are listening may not as well. Talk to me a little bit about that from a marketing automation perspective, Josh, and how are you guys leveraging that with your clients? What aspects of that are you using? Because I just had a conversation with one of my legacy clients just the other day, and he happened to be a plumber. who I don't work with directly anymore, but he reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're going into the Christmas holidays and we're dead. What can we do to get at least a few jobs over the next couple weeks over Christmas break?" And we were able to come up with a couple ideas using Go High Level. But I'm really curious to see, how are you guys leveraging that, and what type of aspects of that marketing automation are you guys using to pull those levers?
Yeah, there's a few things that we really focus on. As most of you know that are listening to this, if you're in digital marketing, one of the most difficult components for your clients is the operations of their business. And when it comes to what we do, that's speed to lead, right? Because leads come in, they get fumbled, they get mishandled, they don't have someone to answer the phone quickly, they don't have someone to return the call quickly, return the form submission, the website chat, whatever it is. So setting up speed to lead enhancements has been huge for us. Missed call, text backs. And with today's technology and stuff like that, a lot of the CRMs that are in our space, there's ways for us to, if they have their phone system tied into that, we can actually even use the missed call from their CRM and still text them back through Go High Level. And we've done that for form submissions. You can even get an API key for Yelp or Angie and stuff like that. And if those leads come in, send a text out. And that way all of their leads come into one place so they can manage them. And then you can have those automated texts. So that way at least they're hearing from the client
Hmm.
quickly. So they at
Yep.
least keep the opportunity open. The door doesn't close because 10 minutes later they've already called two or three competitors. So
That
that's the big one as far
Mhm.
as really helping with the operation side. And that's, again, everything that I work on and have built has been because of what I did in the trades. My job at the companies I worked with was, when leads came in, make sure that they get booked, because I knew
Mhm.
that's the easiest way to be profitable was book leads, follow up with them religiously, stay in front of them with email or content marketing, or stuff through social media, which I know you and I have bonded over quite a bit here over the
Mhm.
last several months.
Absolutely.
Give them valuable advice, tips, feedback, things like that. So we do email marketing, and then when we take a customer's entire list, especially when it's, for us, since we know the seasonality,
Mhm.
HVAC has way more seasonality than plumbing and electric does, but when there's seasonality involved, we can go back through and get tune-ups or plumbing safety inspections, electrical safety inspections, things like that. When a client's really slow, we take their entire customer list and go reach out to them. We've even taken entire customer lists. We are pretty heavy on setting up new GMBs, not
Mhm.
in a black hat way of any sort, but get physical, actual satellite offices, get them verified the right way with video, and then take that customer list and start driving 20, 25, 30 reviews to that new listing right away. All of those little touch points and people clicking on the maps listing and leaving the reviews and stuff. It's crazy how quickly you can grow that listing and start ranking really well for really important key terms. And that's really been our key to success. That's how we grow with clients. We have clients that start with one listing and now they have five, or they
Mhm.
have six, and we have one client that just added one. They're like, I'm going to be adding another one in about 6 months. Like, they actually plan it now. We don't have to really plan it for them.
Nice.
They start growing in different markets. And that way they can start taking market share in these different places without having to go and spend $10,000 a month on paid ads because nobody knows who they are. So it's a real comprehensive approach with all of that stuff to make sure it all works together.
I love the approach though that you're taking and using your experience in the industry, and candidly, from my experience, you've got a real, almost, I want to say, not proprietary, but I mean, what a great model to use to do that, because you and I have both seen local service companies, regardless what's home services or the local chiropractor or dentist, but spend obscene amounts of money on ads because they can't get any local traffic. And it sounds like you've really figured out a way to work within Google's ecosystem to do that, and that's quite the feat. I mean, that's hard to do. So congratulations on that. That's really amazing. From
Yeah,
your
and
perspective, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that the ads thing. I mean, I know that there's a place in time even for our agency. Honestly, we, until October of 2023, so just a few months ago, we had never paid a dime for Facebook or Google ads or any other type of ads. Like, our marketing budget was literally like one of the smallest line items on our P&L, and we had
Mhm.
gotten right to about a $3 million run rate without any ads.
Amazing.
At some point, you have to feed the beast, though, right? Like, we got to that point, and it was finally time to break through that ceiling, because we had reached a ceiling, and I could feel it. We had been like teetering on that 250 MRR for 5-6 months, and it was driving me nuts. Like I hate hitting ceilings and not being able to break through them. I'm a pretty competitive person. So when I get there, I'm like, I'm trying to exhaust every option that we have. But it became time for us, so every business has a time when they need to run ads, but I didn't want to become dependent on them. And even still, now that we're running ads, the easy thing for me would be, well, I don't need to create content. I don't need to create video because I got ads, right? We got leads coming in. I don't need to
Yep.
worry about it. But for me, I want, like, literally 5 minutes before we jumped on this podcast, my wife came in here. We had a client who, or a prospect that she was talking to, loves our podcast, loves everything we're about, loves everything he sees from afar. He's a very quick mover. He grew from 0 to 7 million in like 2 years as an HVAC company, which is really quick.
Wow.
So he's aggressive. He's the right type of client for us, right? He's ready to buy already. And I know you've talked about this because I've seen you talk about it, but it's because we're always giving advice. We're always putting content out there. And for me, having people come in that are already hot leads is huge. So even if we're paying for ads, I want people to still get into our ecosystem, see our emails, see our videos, see our YouTube channel, and be like, wow, these guys got it together. Like, they know what they're doing. And that's really what I want people to see when they think and hear our name.
Well, and it makes so much sense. As you mentioned, you and I are in a couple of coaching groups together, and in one of those, 7-figure agency with Josh Nelson, he talks a lot about omnipresence, and not just for the agencies, but for the clients. And you and I have had many discussions about this through some of the work that we've done together, in how that adds such huge value when you're seen as the go-to expert in your niche. And it makes such, that sales call you're talking about, it's so much easier because they're not calling you and you're not chasing them to find out how you can work with them. They're reaching out to you going, we want to work with you because you're an expert at what you do. And that makes that process much easier. You mentioned your podcast, and I'd love to learn a little bit more about that, Josh. I know you've been doing a podcast for quite a while. Talk to me about what types of things you're doing there, and how do you feel that podcast helps create and add to that omnipresence and that credibility that Relentless is setting up?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have the typical podcast setup that most marketing agencies do, and I'll explain that a little bit. So the guy that I co-host with, he started the podcast in 2017 because he didn't see any other service business focused podcast where you're kind of talking about all business related aspects, how to grow, operate, scale a business. And I had known him for a number of years just through Facebook and stuff. And then I got to meet him at the coaching group, the same coaching group that kind of started everything here. We met at a couple events out in New Jersey. And once I went full time into the digital marketing business, I'm like, hey, I would really like to start a podcast. And I started asking him questions because he's the only one that I knew that was doing it and doing it somewhat successfully. So I kept asking him questions, and he was actually getting kind of burnt out because for 3 or 4 years he had done it all himself. The editing, the posting, going to the shows, like everything. So he didn't have a team, he didn't have a way to monetize it yet, and he was getting burned out. So he asked me to co-host, which at first was awkward to try to. It's like when you watch a football game and you got the person who's like explaining the play by play, and then there's the person after the play that kind of like explains the background.
Yep.
Trying to find your fit with a co-host
Sure.
is a little different because two people shouldn't be doing the same thing. One should be, the one asking all the questions. The other one's kind of like filling in the gaps and kind of recapping things. But we don't, honestly, the company, people know who I am now on the podcast, but we don't put the Relentless Digital name on too many of the things for the podcast. So we do keep it a little separated. It's actually its own separate business entity, which we've now, for those that, if you get a podcast off the ground and you start getting in with some vendors and things like that, I would consider monetizing your podcast with partners, sponsors, and things like that. The market is much more receptive to it today than it ever has been, because people are realizing we had someone who's an early startup. They're a company that's doing AI voice. And for the trades, that's a big deal. Like after hours, answering services, outbound calling, all those things. There's a lot of opportunity there. And he's like, we're early startup. I'm interested in partnership, but I don't think I can really afford it. Well, then his episode got released and he was like, holy shit. Hopefully
That's fine. Good.
Okay. He didn't realize the value of the podcast once it went live and with our listeners and things like that. He got bombarded with requests. So we wanted to revisit the conversation
I love it.
because the value is there. Now, obviously, Tersh is 6 years into this thing. I'm 3 years into it. So we've had some time behind it. It's not an overnight thing, but it can absolutely happen if you have enough value in your podcast. But ours is a little different that way. Mine isn't focused on creating leads for Relentless Digital. It's about giving just quality content to people so they can grow their business in a roundabout way that actually I think has somewhat helped us because I'm not selling Relentless Digital all the time.
Right.
I'm just trying to help. I'm not always trying to put in a pitch for us. So there's some pros and cons to that, but it's not the best lead generator for us because I don't use it that way. It does help on the back end. There's a lot of people that Brittany talks to and, oh, we love the podcast. We love the show. We listen to all the episodes, all that kind of stuff. So it definitely does help. So if you are thinking about starting one or have started one, but you haven't really committed to it, if we're early enough in 2024 here, I would make that your mission this year and then see where it is at the end of 2024 before you decide to give up on it or move on from it. Because the value is enormous. People love podcasts.
No, I think that's one of the things that surprised me a few years ago is that, podcasts kind of had a big resurgence that came up because people we can do video format like we're doing here, but this also gets released in audio format. We can repurpose them to text as well. And I want to commend you on what you're doing. I'm a huge proponent, as you know, of delivering value to your audience because that value creates credibility in you. And I love how you're not just constantly promoting on the podcast Relentless Digital. If people are interested in what you're doing, and when you establish that expertise, they're going to reach out to you. They're going to find you. You and I have done that. We've seen somebody, we've heard them, maybe they've written a book, whatever the case is, and we search them out because we know they have the solution. And we feel like there's a trust there because they haven't tried to sell us stuff every single interaction. I'm going to compare that with you get these as much as I do, but I had a lead vendor who for the last week, every message they've been sending me trying to get me to sign up for them has been, hey, it's $199 for this list. It's $100, and I've sent you 14 payment requests, and I'm like, I never said I was going to buy it. It's like it's never once did they talk to me about the value of the list. Never once did they talk about how I could leverage the list and give me any ideas of why I might want the list. It was just purely an invoice, here's buy my list. And I'm like, one, I don't know you. Two, I don't know who you are. Three, you just started commenting or asking for money. No, I'm not going to do anything. And yesterday it was funny. He actually reached out and he says, so what do I need to do? And I said, you need to earn my trust. And his next message was, here's an invoice for $199. I'm like, never mind.
Oh man. Yeah.
And that may be,
some people don't get it.
Well, and again, that may be an extreme, but I see that happening so much more online than what you're doing and in adding that value. I'll use another example, and it's just one a lot of us on the call or on the audience have heard about. It's Alex Hormozy. Alex Hormozy obviously is very wealthy. He invests in a lot of businesses, but he's only interested in certain businesses. And instead of selling that constantly, he gives away a tremendous amount of value and is candid about the fact that if you reach this level, which I think for him is a little bit over $1 million in EBITDA, then reach out and my team would like to talk to you. But don't worry about it. Just here's the value. Here's the value. And at the same time, he is monetizing it. I know he just released a book last fall and sold, I don't remember the exact numbers, but from what I heard, hundreds of thousands of copies.
Yeah. He just had an update on LinkedIn or something like that.
Okay.
Because he was promoting the fact that he's working on the third in the series, which is probably the sales side of things. But yeah, I just saw his new building. I don't know if you saw the post where
No, I did not.
His new headquarter building, dude's he's doing stuff. It's pretty wild to see what he's been able to do from just a couple books.
It is, but again, he delivers so much value. There's a trust and almost a perceived obligation. When he told me he had another book coming out, it's like his third book. I'll buy the third book the day it's
You're probably
released.
pre-ordered, ready to go. Just tell me where to hit the button and I'll buy it.
Literally. because he's built up enough trust. Now, the first two books have been good. There's no doubt about it, but he gives so much value. There's a couple of other authors like that. When they release something, I just buy it. I don't even, I mean, if I have time to read it or not, I'm going to buy the book because I trust them. I'm going to buy their course because I trust them. I'm going to subscribe to their mastermind because I trust them. And I love how you're doing that on the podcast and building that trust and that credibility. It's a longer term play, like you say, but I think it's a much more solid one. It reminds me a lot. I'd love your opinion on this, Josh. We always talk about not being an ad expert either. Google ads are great because you can turn them on and you can turn them off. But the problem is the moment you stop paying money to Google, all that value goes away, as opposed to like organic SEO. When you do that, yes, it takes longer, but it also sticks. It doesn't just evaporate. And the value that you're giving really strikes me as that same type of thing. It takes longer, but it has so much more longevity to it that it's going to create that sustainable business. What are your thoughts on that? Am I barking up the wrong
Yeah,
tree?
no, I reference Google Ads as a hamster wheel, and I don't mean
Yeah.
that if someone that's your full I mean it in a derogatory sense. It's just as soon as you stop running on that wheel, you don't go anywhere. It
Hmm.
just you stop. Everything, the whole world stops. Which, like I said, there's a place and time where people need that. And if your clients are really good on knowing what their customer's lifetime value is and maximizing that, it's okay to pay $400 or $500 for a new customer. So many businesses have they don't even know how to price their products and services the right way to make a decent profit. And then if they're paying that much for a new customer, like they just don't know how to manage that. They don't know how
Hmm.
to get their customer in the door one time, or they go to their house one time. They don't know how to maximize that relationship to get back or to get referrals or to stay in front of them with email marketing or content marketing. So that way they get friends, neighbors, acquaintances, other people in the local community to refer them. So they're paying extreme amounts of money for a customer that they get maybe one time, maybe two if they're lucky and they do a good job. And they just don't know how to maximize that. If the big companies, that the ones that throw a ton of money at this stuff, they know what they're doing. They have teams that outbound, they have
Hmm.
email marketing, content marketing, text message marketing. They have so many things in place. So for them, $400 or $500 to acquire a new customer is nothing. It's pennies. But the problem is when small businesses get told that they got to spend money on Google Ads, it's a very slippery slope. And I think unless that business owner really knows what they're doing, it's tough. It's a real tough game. And that's why, and a lot of our clients are somewhere in that million to $10 million range. And it's probably
Hmm.
because we don't do some of the paid ad stuff, but we set up their foundation for long-term success. So where they can always get leads, they don't always have to turn something on. So their overall marketing budget stays pretty low, because it's a pretty well-known fact that organic, mostly when I say organic, mostly Google My Business Today or Google Maps, the ROI on that stuff is extreme compared to Google Ads, Facebook ads, and some of the other opportunities that are out there.
Well, and I totally get where you're coming from. I think, I'm like you, I'm not saying ads are bad by any means. There's a necessary point for them, but it's part of a mix. I know some of my legacy clients that I talked to, one of them in particular I'm thinking of, and they're part of a national franchise, and they're like, look, the national franchise wants us to work with this national marketing company, but every time we call them, their answer is spend more money on ads. They don't help us do anything else. It's just spend more money on ads. And I see that, and it really frustrates me as a marketer because while ads are important, I'm not going to ever say you shouldn't ever do them, but like you, I don't spend as much as others do. It's you nailed it, I think, in talking about how the companies that can afford to spend $400 to $500 to land a client, it's because they have the systems in place to nurture and to grow that and to make that lifetime value so much more significant than the average local service company that's going to say, okay, I got one job out of it, I spent $400, the job was 500, between labor and parts I lost money, why am I doing this? So I think that's really profound on your part. I love that.
Well, we had just a quick story to share. We have a
Sure.
new client. It's actually going to bring everything full circle for you. And I didn't even realize this until after he signed up. So we interviewed this gentleman, older gentleman in Massachusetts at a trade show event for the podcast. And it was actually I had no idea who he was. We interviewed him and just his story. This was, I don't know, a few months ago, like October, September, sometime in that time frame. And one of the marketing companies he was talking to referred us because we have some really good partnerships with people. And then, so he already knew who I was. He didn't really know much about our company. And then he met my wife
Hmm.
during the sales process. And this actually is a perfect story for what we're talking about. He grew to about $6 million as a plumbing company. He was spending about $50,000 a month on Google ads. His
Hmm.
website was not very good. His Google My Business was not taken care of very well. He hasn't considered additional locations, which is usually at that size in a big city like Massachusetts, where you're not going to get as much reach on maps because there's so many competitors. You
Right.
really need to consider other offices and stuff. So he didn't really do the foundational stuff. And what happened is his ad account got suspended. He went
Ooh.
from having all these plumbers busy, and it was right before the holidays,
Mm.
to nothing. And he was struggling. We've since worked with another partner to get it up and live and working on everything that we're working on stuff. But you don't put all your eggs in one basket, whether it's you and your ads or whatever you're doing. So even if you do content marketing, don't just do
Right.
content marketing. You
Exactly.
have to do something. Really have to diversify. Like our mix, we have a company that runs top of funnel ads using some AI technology and stuff like that to drive. So before somebody's ready to make a buying decision, there's usually behaviors that they take. Read a blog post, do some research on YouTube, things like that. Things that will trigger in other ad exchanges, blog posts, banner ads, things like that that are outside of the kind of the walled gardens of Facebook and YouTube. So we drive like really high top of funnel stuff, get them into our mix so that way they're starting to see maybe our videos, maybe they're starting to see some stuff starting to follow them around the internet. And then we'll hit them with retargeting ads on Facebook because most of our clients have a Facebook account. So we're kind of like trying to find the really cheap top of funnel stuff. We actually still don't do any Google ads just because of how expensive it is.
Sure.
But then as soon as we get their contact information, they're getting 2 emails a week from us. And these emails are not, hey, book a call, hey, book a call, hey, book a call. It's very every once in a while, like probably every like 6 to 1 or 8 to 1, we're trying to book a call. It's value add stuff from our podcast, stuff that I post online. I take it and repurpose it into emails, videos that we made, old posts that did well, things like that that just help them. But it's just you got to have a full process for your marketing. It's
Mm.
got to be it's a full funnel, not just a part of a funnel. And I think that's where a lot of
Absolutely.
people make mistakes is they're like, well, man, I followed this person and they told me to do this and I've been doing this and doing this. And it's like, it's not really working that well. It's because there's nothing else to it. You got to have more to the marketing funnel. And it's funny. Even marketers don't know that. They know it. They just don't do it because
Yeah, I
they
was gonna
don't know
say
what to
they
do.
know, but they don't drink their own Kool-Aid, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they get stuck and then they get stuck on all the things that happen on a digital marketing side where they're doing the work. They're the client success manager. They're the salesperson. They're the marketer. And they struggle to get past a certain MRR and get a little bit of freedom in their life. And it's a tough thing to get out of until you really can start focusing elsewhere.
Well, I think that story was really good and ties it all together. The importance of not just, like you said, putting all of your eggs in one basket, regardless of where that is. I don't spend a lot on ads, but I also know my ads work a lot better because of the topical authority that I've developed. And if I just relied on one or the other, neither would work as well. That combination certainly works a whole lot better and brings in more.
Well, and
As
honestly,
you
can
go
I
ahead,
add to that? So
please.
there's things that you say, and I'm like, oh, I forgot this part of the story. So the company that referred us found us through our social media content and liked what we were putting out, and just the transparency and how honest and stuff we are. We go about it things a little differently than some. We don't really sales spruce it up. It's very direct. It's very real and raw and stuff like that. We met them through content marketing. He reached out to me on Instagram about a year ago. That company is also now a partner of our podcast, which is
Love
our
it.
other business. So like all of these things play a piece. And until you really lay it out and be like, and you start connecting all the dots, it's wild to like these things pop into my head. I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, there was that thing and that thing. And like, I don't even connect all the dots sometimes because I'm like, all this stuff just works. It's like this
Hmm.
big, it's like putting all this stuff into like a witch's potion. They just start dumping a bunch of stuff in there and you're just mixing it up in the big jug. it just works, but you have to put yourself out there in so many ways for it to work. And you just don't know what opportunities, partnerships, things like that are going to become of it. But it's been great. We got new referral partners because of it, because they love what we're about. People that
Mhm.
I have never even met, they come to us and they're like, I really like what you guys do and what you guys put out. Like, can we meet so we can talk and maybe discuss referrals? Because they want to
Oh,
be associated with someone that they know, like, and trust. Because it's hard.
oh,
If
yeah.
as any business owner, it's hard to find a good referral partner, someone that you can trust, that you like, doesn't cause issues. You know that they're going to take care of any clients that you send to them. So putting yourself out there and being that authentic version of yourself, I think really plays a big part in success in 2024.
Oh, 100% agreed. And I think, so much of what you're talking about resonates with me. And I think it's going to resonate with our audience as well, because it does fit directly in. And you're right. At the end of the day, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. And when you're out there adding value, you create an implicit obligation on the people that are getting that value. Not that you're telling them that, but they feel that obligation then to work with you in a good way. It's not like you're strong arming them. They're like a magnet. You're pulling them towards you, and it's just so valuable. Well,
Yeah, they made that
one of the
decision before. Sorry, I keep
oh no,
interrupting.
you're good. You're good. Go ahead.
I got a lot to say,
I
but
love it.
no, they make that decision. It's just like anything else. Like when we make buying decisions and it's our decision, and nobody forced us into it or felt like we were sold into it, is 100% we want it. No, it's a different thing versus like, I was kind of sold into it. So you're kind of one foot in, one foot out. You're not really sure if it's for you. If you've made that decision that this is absolutely the best thing for me right now, you don't have those regrets. You don't have that buyer's remorse. And it makes the
Exactly.
relationship start in a much better place.
Well, I was just thinking buyer's remorse as you were talking through that. It does alleviate that, and that's an amazing thing. Well, we talked a little bit earlier, Josh, about the name of our podcast, 91 Day Success Podcast. And I'd love, as we're talking about this, to get your feedback. We always challenge all of our guests to say, hey, if you were going to start a new business or advise somebody who was going to start a new business and you had $1,000 to start the business, I know it's not a lot. It's even less now than it was a year ago when we started this. But you don't have to worry about, your groceries. You don't have to worry about your car, but you've got $1,000 cash. And your goal is to build a business in the first 3 months or 91 days that's generating $10,000 a month in revenue. What would you do for the first 90 days or 91 days to make that happen, to put your best foot forward? Or what would you advise somebody to do in that area?
Yeah, this is a great question. I love the theme of this question because there's a lot going on in a business in the first 90 days.
Oh,
Like I still remember when I realized I was going to have my first client who wasn't even from the US. Ironically enough, they were from Toronto. I have to figure out how to open a business bank account. And I didn't know how
yes.
to do that at the time. So it's crazy how far we come in a short period of time. So a lot of and I didn't do it in the first 90 days, but I started doing it when I went full time, which was about a year into my business. And I would absolutely start the same way, or I would start this much sooner, is full on content marketing. Because one, it's you either you have $1,000, right? And
Right.
you can make a money investment and pay for ads to get quick wins, or you can do a time investment. For me, especially early on when you're not bombarded with clients and all the other
Hmm.
things that employees and all the other stuff that comes with that, it's easier to set the foundation, in my opinion. It's just like when you're building a house, when there's nothing else around, it's easy to build the
Right.
foundation. Nobody's bothering you. There's nothing else going on. Nobody's living in the house. Build the foundation early because the foundation serves as such a huge potential revenue generator later, where it makes things a lot easier. Content marketing and learning how to repurpose every single piece you create, turning it into like literally being on every platform. LinkedIn's an awesome source for organic content. Like LinkedIn does really well. Repurposing that stuff on Facebook, engaging in Facebook groups, not just like when people are asking questions about a service that you provide, don't just say, hey, DM me. I don't know
Yes.
anyone that actually likes that in 2024. I think it's the cheesy. I'm like, how long have you been on Facebook? Like, Just answer the question so everybody can see your great answer.
Thank
You'd
you.
be shocked at how many people are like, man, they start loving your comments and then they start following you and then they add you as a friend and then they start following your stuff later. And it's just like this. And I'm in Arizona now, so the analogy isn't as great. I used to live in Wisconsin. It's like taking, and I know you can probably relate to this with Michigan. It's like taking a snowball and rolling it down a hill. It just gets bigger and bigger. And eventually it becomes this thing that's kind of like its own autonomous thing that just keeps growing. So for me, I would heavily invest in video and probably work with you too, because working with you, at least on a monthly basis, is a little bit less than that $1,000. Focus on getting video content out there,
Yep.
blogs out there, and tying this, figuring out how to tie it all together, because it's going to be your best friend later on. It's going to make life so much easier. So that way you're not spending 20% of your revenue on marketing.
Some great points there. And I want to put an exclamation point if you're listening. One of the things Josh has shared there in my mind is so critical. When you're on social media and you're engaging people in conversations, and so many of us as business people do that, like you, Josh. So I've seen so many people that somebody expresses interest and they're like, DM me. And it's like, if you would just give that answer publicly, more people would love you. I'm running into this. I run an AI group right now. We just, as we're recording this, a little over 20,000 members in it, all about AI prompting. And one of the things that's been happening a lot lately is we have a lot of people sharing images, which is fine. The AI generated images are really popular, but we've been requesting that everybody share the prompt they're using. And it's been amazing. 90% of the people are like, yes, please. And you get great engagement. And probably 10% of the people are like, I'm not going to share that. You might copy my image. What's really been interesting is the people that develop the opinion of, yeah, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm sharing, and I do that myself. The engagement goes through the roof because, again, you're providing value, just like we were talking earlier. And when you don't, when you're like, oh no, just DM me, or now all of a sudden I think you're going to try to sell me a course, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It just
Mhm.
changes that entire conversation. In my mind, it's like going to a networking event. And when somebody asks what you do, instead of telling them, handing you your business card and saying, well, why don't you call me later? They're standing in front of you asking what you do. So what? There's 4 other people around. Tell them. I think that's great advice.
Well, and some there's one person asking questions. These groups, there's more than one person that needs the answer to that question. There's just one person
Absolutely.
asking it right now. So give the answer to everybody, at least your version of the answer.
Yeah,
And don't, I know sometimes on Facebook, you get like a lot of shorthand stuff, like people just send like a real short reply because they're busy and they want to move on to the next thing. It's like anything, whatever you invest in water is going to grow. Whatever
absolutely.
you take, whatever you water and find sunlight and nurture and all this stuff, it's going to grow. If you don't, it's not going to grow. So those groups, I tell you a funny story. There's it's probably the second biggest CRM in our space. We, when people look for SEO companies in that group, which is often, we do very well. That's honestly, and this is why we never had to run ads, because we have given so much value. And every time somebody asks a question that is somewhat relevant that I want to answer, I answer it fully. I don't just
Yes.
give a quick reply or, hey, send me a message or book a call or anything like that. And what happens is we've actually had, and I have screenshots of this because I pointed it out to our team. We have people who have never, ever worked with us that recommend us all the time. And it's wild. It's something you can't really plan for it. People have to really relate to your messaging and resonate with it. But it's amazing, like to have people, I'm like, I don't recognize this person. So I look in our records, I'm like, they never worked with us, never worked with us. And of course you get a couple of your clients that, go above and beyond and will put a nice message in there. And all of a sudden you're dominating a Facebook group there's like 15,000 people in there.
Hmm.
We don't own the group. We're not an admin or anything like that. We don't make posts in the group and stuff. We just comment and give value. And it's, again, it's either a money investment or time investment. But the thing with the time investment is if you make it up front, it pays dividends long after you're done doing a lot of it. I still do that stuff to this day, even though we hit 3.2 last year in our 4th year.
Congrats. That's amazing.
And I still do it to this day because it is that important to me. And I know it just continues to pay massive dividends for our company. Like as soon as one of those posts go up about, SEO company, website company, we get leads. It's like on demand. We get leads from it every time. Or they'll say, I've even had people say, man, we know you're really respected in the group and you have a great reputation and all this stuff. And it all comes from exactly what we're talking about here is just giving that time, giving that value, giving your expertise. And it's just absolutely wild what it can do for your business.
So good, so good. Well, if somebody's listening today, and I assume we're going to have a number of them that want to reach out, Josh, and either work with you or maybe start following the podcast, we'll put some links in. But what's the best way? They're driving down the road, they're listening to this on their car, they're taking the dog for a walk. What's the best way for them to reach out and connect with you, Josh?
I would say for me on Facebook, that's probably the easiest way. I'm on there more than I should be,
Aren't
like
we
most of
both?
us.
Yes.
But that's probably the easiest way. You can message me on LinkedIn, and I check that once or twice a day. I don't get that one. I don't have notifications turned on because the people reaching out are sometimes it's kind of spammy. But Facebook, I do have
Majorly, yeah.
those notifications turned on, so you can reach me there.
Awesome. We'll do. And we'll put your website here as well as links to the podcast and make sure we've got that all out. Josh, I want to thank you for your time today. I know you've got a lot going on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us, chat with the audience, and everything else. It's been immense value, and you shared just some amazing tips. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I appreciate you having me on. It's been great following you, and I've learned a lot from you in the last few months, which I wish I would have known 4 years ago when I started doing all this content marketing. It would have been of course, we didn't have AI at that point, so I guess there
Yeah.
wouldn't have been something we could do. But I've learned a lot, which has made things even easier for us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And then thank you for listening to the podcast today. We really appreciate it. If you've got questions, I want to encourage you, reach out to Josh, connect with him. He's a wealth of information and he truly does know what he's talking about. And as you heard today, he just knows his stuff. So thanks, everybody. Make it a great day. Don't forget to like our podcast and leave us a 5-star review. Oh, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks and make it a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.